Hi everyone. Hopefully this will record correctly and you'll be able to see my whole screen. I'm not sure what that's doing. There we go. Okay, so my research project is on talking to teens about sex and about examining the amount of communication between parents and children about sex. So, in the United States, abstinence-only sexual education in many public schools is the norm. Therefore, in order for adolescents to learn about healthy sexual behaviors, parents must sometimes step in and fill in the gap. Unfortunately, many studies show that parents do not adequately talk to their children about sex, and today's kids get their information from either their peers or from the internet, which can be problematic because they may not be receiving accurate information. Therefore, helping parents effectively communicate about sexual topics with their children can positively influence their adolescent sexual behavior. Parent-child communication may reduce risky sexual behaviors such as early age at first intercourse, engaging in sex with multiple partners, and engaging in sex without contraceptives. Many studies have examined the relationship between parent-child communication and other variables such as socioeconomic status, race, and parental education levels, and have found that children that live in poverty or in areas with high rates of violence or with parents that have lower levels of education have barriers barriers when it comes to access to health care, employment, educational opportunities, and they also have higher levels of STIs among available or preferred sex partners. However, no studies, to the best of my knowledge, have specifically compared parents that receive public assistance and the rate of communication with their adolescents about sex. While studies have concluded there are many factors like poverty that are related with risky sexual behaviors, research that focuses on parents that receive public assistance is especially useful because it provides the site of interaction where parental education can occur. Parents that receive public assistance often have to visit with caseworkers and are given access to other resources such as locations of food pantries or places for mental health counseling. So education aimed at parent-child communication could be added as an intervention when they're meeting with these caseworkers that may help prevent risky sexual behaviors and or teen pregnancy. Resources available through public assistance may be able to inform parents on strategies to communicate about sexual topics with their children. Research shows that the more empowered a parent feels about their sexual knowledge, the more likely they will communicate with their children about sexual behaviors. Educational resources provided at the family level may prevent risky sexual behaviors, especially for adolescents that do not have access to information about sexual health that is both reliable and appropriate for their specific lived experiences. Parental communication can be a better alternative to sexual education in school because parents can customize topics for their children and give moral guidance specific to their family and or their culture when it comes to sexual behavior. Many researchers have explored if socioeconomic conditions play a role in the behavioral and emotional outcomes of children. Some research has found that poor children have worse emotional and behavioral outcomes. Other studies that were also done on the AdHealth survey, which my research is on, examined if ethnicity influences whether or not mothers communicated with their daughters about sex, and found that non-whites were least likely to report discussing sex with their daughters. However, my hope is to fill a gap in the literature by focusing on parents that receive public assistance and their levels of parental communication about sex. These results could be important to public policymakers, perhaps if students are not receiving comprehensive sexual education in schools, another place where parents can be given educational resources would be at the level of public assistance and their interaction with public assistant providers. Current research has not addressed public assistance as a site for these interventions before. Examining poverty is a good first step, but poverty alone doesn't give us the place to intervene and help parents with educational resources. So my research question, I explored the National Longitudinal Study of Adolescent Health, or we call that the Ad Health Survey, to ask this research question. Do parents that receive public assistance report that they talk to their adolescents about sex not at all, somewhat, or a moderate to great amount? My hypothesis is there will be a significant association between parents that are receiving public assistance and the rate of communication about sexual topics with their children. I think it will be similar to the association between socioeconomic status and parent-child communication that has been found in other research. So in my literature review, some common themes were importance of the frequency of talking to adolescents about sex, the importance of timing the sex talk, and the parental role, and also welfare assistance as a site of contact to communicate with parents. So repetition of sexual discussions, which is frequency, was associated in some studies with adolescents feeling closer to their parent and feeling like they have a greater sense of open communication. DiClemente found that teens who engaged in conversations about sex-related topics with their mothers were less likely to report being sexually experienced, reported fewer lifetime partners, and were more likely to talk about sex with their partners. Timing is important because you want to do this kind of education before the first time they have intercourse. So, one study found that many parents and adolescents do not talk about sex before they have their first intercourse. Parent-adolescent communication about sex that occurs before first intercourse is associated with greater condom use. Another study found that half of the parents that they surveyed, said they had not yet discussed birth control with their sons. And then while nearly 2/3 of their sons reported they had already had sex and that they had not talked about condom use with their parents by the first time they had sex. Researchers have found that discussions about condoms prior to sexual debut is associated with a 20-fold increase in rates of continued and regular condom use among adolescents. The parental role is also very important because common to a lot of these studies I found the important influence of parents and the degree to which parents communicate with their children about sexually sensitive issues. A lot of these studies found that adolescents prefer learning about sexuality from their parents, and that their parents actually have more influence than school, friends, or siblings. And also, parents that have more accurate information about sex feel more competent and will communicate more with their children. And that another researcher found that a parent's lack of knowledge contributes to a lack of communication in the home. A researcher that went to a workplace and did parental-child communication, sex ed, with parents using 7 different kind of themes or interventions, found that in all 7 interventions in which content was given exclusively or primarily to parents, resulted in a significant positive change in their youth sexual behavior outcomes, such as increased condom use and decreased sexual activity. Parents are important also, again, when it comes to timing, because in one study I read, 31% of African American and 15% of Hispanic ninth graders had reported being sexually active prior to age 13. So by the time they're in high school, this information can be too late. Parents are a vital resource in providing crucial information to their children, and that when parents talk to their teens about sex, they experience a protective benefit based on communication with parents that was not observed for sexual education delivered in formal settings. And with this, I want to say a quick thing about gender is that in one study I read, 1 in 4 parents and daughters said they had not talked about how to resist pressure for sex, and approximately 2 out of 5 said they had not discussed how to choose a method of birth control or what to do if a partner refuses to wear a condom. Consistent with previous research, communication about sex is almost always earlier with daughters than with sons, which in my mind may be a sign that society polices girls' sexuality and sees it as more problematic than boys' sexuality. Well, I'm kind of running out of time, so let me just get through this next slide. Here you can read about some risk factors that include single-parent families, living in poverty or in a high-poverty neighborhood, and having parents with limited education. In one study that was done on fifth graders, which is age 10 to 11, that had parents that were unemployed, received some type of public assistance, were significantly more likely to have already had sexual intercourse. There's also differences in socioeconomic status and in race and ethnicity. As you can see here, lack of communication was associated with not using contraceptives, less communication between themselves and their sex partners, and lower efficacy to negotiate safe sex. I use the AdHealth. I use for my dependent variable parent-child communication about sexual topics and the independent variable of receiving public assistance. I did a chi-square test, and you can see here that I found a strong association between receiving public assistance and the amount of parent-child communication about sex. I also did a multivariate analysis and found that parent education level, so this I used the variable of parent education level, that parent education level and receiving public assistance combined explains only 0.12% of the variance in parent-child communication about sex. For each percent increase in receiving public assistance, parent-child communication about sex increased by 0.094 when controlled for parent education level. Conclusions and future research. The cost burden of STIs for youth is high, at least 6.5 million annually in the United States, with HIV infection accounting for more than 80% of this expenditure. So teenage pregnancy is also a huge problem, resulting in over $34 billion a year in social support programs for young parents. So I think my findings support the idea that the welfare system could be a place to guide parents in how to address sexual health with their adolescents in a timely fashion before risky sexual behaviors begin. And I also think that future research should focus on the importance of culturally sensitive principles, such as people from different religions, that, we want to be careful to not interfere with people's cultural sensitivities, but also I think that it is important to have interventions tailored for not only religious differences, cultural differences, and those and for LGBT youth. So that's my 15-minute presentation, and please give feedback, especially on my methods and analysis portion, because I don't think I was doing that right. Okay, thank you. Bye.